Yes, thank you very much, Sean. And once again, a very big welcome to all of our attendees and to all of you members, those who are members of FEM, the Institute of Plumbing South Africa, or IOPSA, as well as SIOSH. And we want to say thank you very much to every single one of you, always sharing your information as well as sending us the questions, like the question that we have today. How do we actually perform pre-task evaluations, and what is a pre-task evaluation? Now, as always, if we do have a how-to section on a Tuesday morning, you will receive a handout just to guide you in understanding it. And there it is on the handout section. So please go to your interface, click on the handouts tab, and then you can just literally click on that little handout. It is in an Excel format. Reason being is you will need to tailor it to your specific task, environment, or work area. And we'll discuss that a little bit more in our toolbox talk this morning. But first, I just want to discuss a question that came through via email a couple of weeks ago, because we have been discussing planned task observations, job observations, DSTRs, mini risk assessments, all of these types of documents that go along with assisting us in a safe working environment or ensuring that our work is done correctly. Now, many of you were saying, brilliant, we love having so many safety documentation, and a lot of you were saying, why is there so much documentation? And it almost seems to be the same type of documentation, and we would tend to agree. There are a lot of things in your safety files that seem to be a repeat of something else, but you have to understand why it was designed and the purpose, as well as what manner you need to use these documents in. And I'll just give you a quick illustration. When we get to site, a risk assessment is generally done before we start work on the site. We get to site, we do an evaluation of the site, and that is when a risk assessment is actually done on the site, and we kind of know the information of the task. But in order to make it site specific, we do a full risk assessment on site to ensure we know all the risks and hazards associated with that site. But before the task is done, maybe 3 or 4 months later, still on the same site, we do what we call a DSTI. And that is because the main risk assessment still has the same risks and hazards, but the environment, the people, the contractors, the work, the change of management, all of this might have changed during those few months or weeks on site. In fact, a site can change from day to day. Even your working environment, this comes to your attitudes, the tools that you're working with, or even the tasks that you're performing. And it's because of these changes that reminders are needed. In fact, these documents are there to pick up any inconsistencies, deficiencies, weaknesses, and potential issues that may need the main risk assessment to be reviewed. So this is the reason why we have seemingly documents that might repeat itself, but it's all designed in the interest of ensuring that it is effective, adequate, manageable, and sustainable throughout the entire project. And this document is no different. Now, before we start with what is a pre-task evaluation, we must just stipulate there are some documents that might be in use already by yourself, and this could be a job hazard analysis. This is very similar to a pre-task evaluation. However, it is broad. So a pre-task evaluation could be evaluating anything from the site to the task to the tools to the people. A job hazard analysis is a little bit more specific in that it takes one specific task. It identifies only those related risks and hazards and then does an analysis on that. Whereas a pre-task evaluation is a little bit more taking the environment into account. So let's discuss this and see which one is best used for you. If it's not necessary for you to use this and you're already using a job hazard analysis, well, then continue to do it as long as we have some sort of continual risk assessment in process that is continuing to see what is happening on site and help us to remain effective in mitigating risks. So what is a pre-task evaluation? Well, every single task, including site and people, have hazards and risks that they will be exposed to. So a pre-task or before task evaluation are there to ensure that the risks associated with this are mitigated to the best possible degree. Now, this sounds familiar because that is a risk assessment. However, we are being a bit more specific on task issues. The pre-task evaluation should be a documented procedure that is carried out prior to tasks being performed, very similar to a job hazard analysis. These are generally done, though, on medium to high risk rating tasks. Now, for you, you might want to use them on low risk tasks, and you're more than welcome to do that because no risk should be too low for us not to consider it. But the consensus in the institute at the moment, or in the industry at the moment, is that medium to high risks generally have a pre-task evaluation. This is done as part of a system of safe work. In other words, every time we get to a site, we have to start safe. Now, it's not effective enough just to stand and see that the site is safe and give the thumbs up and say we can continue. We need to have some documented proof. And this is where documents like this come into play. So questions like, what measures are in place to keep the task safe? What about the environment? What about the people that are working in the environment and on the task? All of these measures have to be checked for suitability, adequacy, as well as effectiveness in ensuring risks and hazards are mitigated. In other words, made safer for that person. As we mentioned in many of our toolbox talks, it's impossible sometimes to take the risk away completely. A measure of risk and exposure will always be there for the people as well as the environment. So this evaluation then is not a checklist of while the job is being performed. No. Remember, it is there before the job gets done. So you need to have a little bit of information first. And one of the things that this pre-task evaluation is going to be looking at is legislation. Are you abiding by what is documented in the Act, in the regulations, in the standards, in the specifications, etc.? So let us just take an example. If we were on site as a plumber and we needed to install a hydro boil and then later on a geyser, later on we were climbing up onto the roof and we were going to be jetting some high jet water in order to clean certain areas, in order to put down JoJo tanks, whatever it is that you were actually performing on site, there were various tasks that you quoted for on that site. Now, the one task, perhaps installing your hydro boil, it would not be necessary to use a scaffold. So you wouldn't really have working at heights. You wouldn't need to have a safety harness. You wouldn't need to have a full protection plan. In fact, you wouldn't even need to get a company to set up and dismantle your scaffold and have an inspector checking it. All of that falling under the SANS 10085 code or standard is not necessary for that task. But when we do an evaluation of what is needed now to get onto the roof, the safe means of access becomes a scaffold, the use of a scaffold. We might not be working on that scaffold, but we are using it to access a certain area. The minute we are now working on a scaffold, we start working at heights. And yes, a scaffold is safe enough to be able to work on its platform or walk on its platform without a harness. But what about the area that you are accessing, like the roof? Is there a parapet wall? Is there a lifeline setup? This type of evaluation helps us to take into account not just the task being performed using a jet of air or a jet of water or setting up a JoJo tank or anything plumbing related or whatever task you are performing, that will come into play after the safe means of access to the job. Now, many times these are things that are unforeseen. Not to say that we don't know that we need a scaffold to get up onto the roof, but a lot of times we have on site people thinking they can get onto the roof, a 4 or 5 meter roof, with a ladder and not wear a harness, not have full protection, not be trained in working at heights. All of this is poor planning, poor preparation, and because they have not done an evaluation of the site. We know that you know how to perform your tasks. The evaluation is there to ensure that the environment you are putting yourself into is specific to the safety standards that are needed, as well as effective in saving your life or the life of your employees while on site. So, the act or regulation that you would need when installing any plumbing on top of working at heights platforms, one of them would be the SANS 18885 if you are using a scaffold. And that entire regulation is going to assist you in understanding what needs to be done on site. If it falls into construction, you can have a look at the Construction Regulation 16 on what scaffolding is, and that will also point you to this SANS code, saying that any additional legislation or standards must be abided by all the time. So again, this evaluation is not done while the task is being performed. It is an evaluation of what is needed before the task is performed, keeping in mind that safety should be your priority. Now, we'll mention this later on about the person who does this, and many times it is more job-related, financial aspects, profit and loss, but safety should really be a main part of these evaluations as well. In fact, a lot of times these are two separate documents, and we would love you to get to a point where this could be one document, where when you go to the project to evaluate the cost of the installation of your products, as well as your man hours and labor costs, all of this should also have a safety element attached to it. So why not take the handout that you have as a generic handout and tailor make it to your situation? Now we get to the how-to part. How are you actually going to take this handout, or perhaps you have already a pre-task evaluation? How are you going to change it up to ensure that it is site-specific? In fact, you're going to get it so that it is suitable to the needs of your work. Well, in order to create a pre-task evaluation form, you do need a few other types of documents, such as the risk assessment for that site or that task being performed, the method statement, the step-by-step procedure of how you go about performing this, as well as the safe working and safe operating procedures. Now, what is the difference between these? Well, the risk assessment is also a step-by-step procedure of what gets done, but some steps will be left out because there's no relevant risk or hazard. It could have already been captured in a previous step. The method statement, however, are the full list of steps that need to be taken. Arriving on site, unpacking, getting things ready, signing your safety file, all of that should be part of your method statement. The safe working procedure is inside one of those steps. You might be using a Stanley knife. So you need to have a safe working procedure on how to use a Stanley knife. If you are using a drill, and one of the steps is to drill into the wall to put a bracket on for a geyser. Well, because you are operating a drill, you will need a safe operating procedure for that part. So you can see how all of these documents communicate together, and each part of the document will speak to each other, thus having a more effective system of mitigating the risks for everything that you do, touch, or area that you are in. Now, from here, with these types of documents, you should have the relevant information literally of the area, which should have been done through your risk assessment, keeping in mind the environmental aspects, the method statement, the task being performed, and then all the safe working or safe operating procedures for all the equipment that is going to be used. This information now can help you to develop a form that is tailored to the task, not a generic document. So start with the inspector's name, the date, the area, and also the task title, what is going to be performed, and who are the relevant partakers in this inspection. Then you can have a set of predefined tasks, But again, this should always change to suit the needs. Let's take a look at generic versus task specific. If you were a plumber in this picture at the bottom, you are on ground level, you are having to maybe change a tap or just take a look at a leak. Would you be asking in your predefined questions, does the person have working at heights? Is there SANS 1885 for scaffolding? Well, no. These questions now are not relevant for this task. So these can be changed to asking yourself about, is the isolation in place to ensure that when I check the leak and something goes wrong, I do not burst a pipe and flood the area. So isolate the water point, making sure that somebody is there to turn it off in case the leak gets worse. So tailor making it to task specific means you need to understand the task. Would you ask a question about confined space permits if you were in an open area with 2 exits and no confined space hazards existed? Well, probably not. But don't just leave it in the document. Take it out and substitute it with a question that relates to the task. Remember, it's an evaluation of the task, not just evaluation of safety in general. And this will take you from generic to specific. So a question that I often get is, who should be doing the evaluation? Now, I can't say for sure who in your company should be doing it, and I do apologize with a lot of the emails coming through. I can't state it must be the owner, the employer, it must be a manager. It all depends on who understands the information. So this type of checklist or this type of document must be done by a competent individual. Now, what is the term competent? Well, according to the construction regulations, it is a person who has the required knowledge, training, and experience, and where applicable, the qualifications specific to that task. And then also, if these qualifications are necessary to be done or registered in terms of the NQF or the National Qualifications Framework, according to SAQA, then those qualifications must also be in place. And I'll give you for instance, if you are doing first aid or working at heights or all of these different types of training or qualifications, it must be done through a company that is qualified to give those courses. Then the second part is they must be familiar with the Act, the Occupational Health and Safety Act, as well as the applicable legislation. So a competent person has the ability, knowledge, and skill to do something successfully. This would be the person who needs to do the evaluation. But it doesn't mean they have to do it alone. You can have a group of people that form a competent evaluation team. But now another question that we had is, why do we need these types of documents? Well, regardless of the size of your task, safety must be a key component of every job. And you as contractors must make planning for safety a priority. Having a safe job site should be considered and made part of the evaluation process, and it should be treated as an integral part of the entire project from start to finish. When you visit your site to gain information, ensure that evaluating safety concerns is outlined in your assessment, and that every job is going to be done safely and in compliance with the correct legislation. Again, when assessing the site, keep in mind what you need to accomplish, including the site conditions, making it site specific. And once you have a contract, don't forget about the safety aspect. Work equals money. We need it. But safety equals life. So thank you very much for joining us this morning and discussing pre-task evaluations. We hope the handout assists you to a degree in understanding what more is required. This is a very generic and a very basic evaluation form, so please use it just to tailor make your current evaluations, or drop me a mail or text on what you are using that is a little bit more comprehensive, and we can see if we can't maybe get these documents out to those who perhaps do not have this type of information. To end off, and I don't want to take too much time, normally we give you a reminder of the training that is coming up, the free training for our IOPSA members. Now, it has come to that time of year where FEM and IOPSA have asked me, what more can we do for our members next year? So if you enjoyed being part of the free training, or perhaps you didn't get a chance to join this time around, or perhaps you weren't a member, we would like to hear from you. OHSS, on behalf of you, are going to request IOPSA, FEM, and SIOSH for additional dates and venues for the entire South Africa, and we have identified the following 6 courses that we are going to request for you as the members. First aid, basic firefighting, your hazard identification and risk assessment, OHS representation, and then the 2 different types of legal liabilities, that for employees, as well as your executive legal liabilities for employers, and then a documented OHS file management course, which has actually been developed and designed by myself. It is how to manage your safety file, and this is done for those on site, not the safety officers, the guys filling in the documentation, taking them through a course to understand what is needed on site. So please, if you would like to join a course like this, if you think this is necessary in the industry, drop us a mail with some inspirational words on why this would be needed. We would really love to hear from you. Send it to safety@iopsa.org or info@ohss.co.za, so that we can, on your behalf, approach these guys at this time of the year where they're asking, what must we do for 2020? And we'd really like to give good value back to you, the individual on site, the employer who is managing and running your company, so that we can take a little bit more away from you in terms of the safety management, but give you more value in terms of competent employees understanding what they need to do. So sorry for taking a little bit longer this morning. We really look forward to speaking to all of you next week, and we will be discussing the topic on vehicle safety. What must we have as a safety aspect when working on vehicles, driving vehicles, or any of our company or personal private vehicles. So thank you very much. We look forward to speaking to you all next week, and we'll hand it over back to you, Sean.
All right, perfect. Thanks so much, Chris. We do have a couple of questions here for you this morning, so I'm going to get right into them. The first question reads, how often should a risk analysis be done?
Well, thank you very much for that question. Risk analysis is a little bit more of a generic term. So there are 3 different types of risk assessments. You have a baseline risk assessment, which gets done at the beginning of a project and is only ever changed when big, massive changes actually happen. You then have a task-specific or issue-based risk assessment, which is, as it mentions, task specific or issue specific for every little thing that gets done on site. For instance, roofing, plumbing, electrical, civils, etc. Each has their own issue or task-based risk assessment, and this is generally done within 3 months. That's when you constantly review and monitor those risk assessments, or after an incident or accident has happened. And then a continuous risk assessment is done as per site specifications. So a DSTI, or a daily safe task instruction, will be done every single day. Pre-task evaluations are done prior to any task being performed. If there's 10 tasks, you do it 10 times. So there are many various different types of risk assessments that needs to be done, but each has its place and each obviously has a reason for having it. If you'd like to know some more information on that, please again drop me a mail, or if you have a more specific type of question relating to a certain document, maybe I can assist you a little bit more. Thank you, Sean.
Right, perfect. The next question reads, what is the time frame for reporting an injury on duty?
That is a very good question. Oftentimes it depends on the actual injury. So according to Section 24 of the Occupational Health and Safety Act, there are certain guidelines of when a reportable injury must be given, obviously, to the Department of Labor. Death would be immediate. Any serious or major incidents and accidents are generally within that day or within the week that need to be reported. But as a general rule, and from most of the specifications that I've read, you have to report an incident or an accident before the end of your shift. Now, that is the maximum time limit. In fact, what we want to get used to is the reporting of incidents and accidents immediately, especially ones that have a potential to become another incident or accident to someone else. So when it becomes a near miss, this can be jotted down and handed in at the end of the shift. First aid, generally you are going to be going to the first aider to get checked out, and thus you are reporting it immediately. Anything over and above a first aid starts becoming minor or major incidents, which generally are going to require you to report them straight away. So as a rule of thumb, as soon as possible, latest by the end of your work shift. Thanks, Sean.
Right, perfect. And that is all of the questions we have got for you this morning. So is there anything you'd like to say to end off, Chris?
No, just a very big thank you to all of our attendees. Obviously, we're coming up to the last stretch of the year, so please keep safe. Don't lose sight of your safety. We really want you to have a safe December and welcome you all back into the new year. We've really had, for most of us, a really brilliant year, and we've really enjoyed doing these Toolbox Talks every Tuesday morning. So we look forward to having the next few weeks with you and ask you to please reach out to us and give us any criticism, comments, or suggestions on these Toolbox Talks on how we can improve and make it better for you. And then thank you to you, Sean, for always being there in organizing these things.
All right, 100%. Thanks so much, guys, for joining us. I am going to go ahead and end the session off now. Please remember the survey on the way out, right? And guys, if it does not open for you, as it does open in your web browser, if it does not open for you, right, do not worry about the CPD points. We do have it based on the attendee report. But if you do still want to submit that survey, guys, you can go ahead and email me at support@articulated.co.za. And I will send you the link for that assess or for that survey. Other than that, guys, I will go ahead and end the session off now. Thanks so much for joining us, and I'll see everybody same time next week. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.